No intro, no small talk. Here's the recap for Chapter 33 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. I'm Nim without the E, please. Help me get this video to 100 likes or 1k hype points. And once again, thank you so much, guys. So yeah, Chapter 33 is titled Shattering Futures, and Sarada, in her new outfit design, is the cover for this chapter. A character choice for the cover that was completely unexpected, because at the very least, this chapter doesn't focus on Sarada. Instead, it's all about Inojin. Yeah, that's just how it is. So, after previously seeing how the situation turned upside down, after Konoha had nearly defeated Mamushi, Sarada and Kawaki collapsed simultaneously, especially since they were the final executors who would determine the outcome of this invasion. Unfortunately, that unexpected turn of events allowed Mamushi to split his body again, increasing his numbers to as many as 1,000 and counting. But even so, although Mamushi had initially knocked Kawaki down, and though it wasn't fatal, the Mamushi didn't continue attacking Kawaki or the others. Instead, they walked straight toward Ida as their absolute target. Meanwhile, Sumire, watching Sarada's condition on a monitor, was quite worried about her. But according to Boruto's confirmation, fortunately Sarada was still breathing, and her life was not in danger. However, one thing Boruto was worried about was Sarada's eyes, because after using Ohirume and fainting, Boruto, while wiping the blood from Sarada's eyes, was very worried that it might also cause damage to her eyes. However, at this point, it seems everything will be fine as long as Himawari is still here, because for the second time, thanks to Himawari, Sarada was successfully healed. The damage to her blood vessels and the bleeding have been repaired and stopped. But if we look at the severity of Sarada's injuries, we can probably guess the outcome. I mean, if we look back at chapter 11, especially when Inojin was confirmed dead after his body was destroyed by Jura's attack, that fatal wound somehow regenerated, and in the end, it was like nothing ever happened. And if we compare these two cases, Sarada's eye should be just fine moving forward. Even though at this point Hima doesn't know and can't confirm whether there's anything wrong with her vision, at least if Hima can regenerate in Shattered Body, this shouldn't be a major issue, right? Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. And now, here comes the climax. While Boruto is protecting Sarada and Kawaki is helpless, Daemon stands alone facing 1,000 Mamushi ready to devour Ida. With that expression, Daemon challenges them all to come forward, and he'll wipe them all out at once. But before that, Inojin seems pretty pessimistic about his friend's situation, especially given the number of Mamushi. But since Inojin knows Koji has the ability to see the future, he wants to know what's going to happen next. Unfortunately, Koji didn't know and couldn't explain to Inojin what would happen next. Because since 4 days ago, right when Koji taught Inojin that new technique he saw from the future, he hasn't received any more information or updates from the future. In other words, the Jippo ability that allows Koji to see future timelines can indeed appear at any time, randomly. But unfortunately, Koji can't control it and can't use the ability at will. And yeah, that's how the ability works. And here's another crucial point. In the middle of the conversation between Koji and Inojin, it seems Inojin forgot that he was using a jutsu that allowed him to stay connected with several other members of the operation, including Amado himself. Because when Koji explained the cause, the Mamushi invasion actually happened earlier than he predicted. And even worse, it occurred at the exact same time as Kobu's arrival. And yeah, all of that explanation was heard and known by Amado. But even though it hasn't been confirmed whether Amado knows that Kashin Koji is still alive or not, at the very least, he's now aware of that prescience ability, the one that lets Koji see the future. But honestly, I'm still not fully convinced, because no matter what, Koji shouldn't be careless enough to just reveal that ability to everyone on purpose, especially when they're using a transmission technique that connects all the members together. So, was it just a mistake or an accident that let Amado find out? Or does Amado actually have another way of knowing about the conversation between Inojin and Koji? We'll just have to wait for more clues. Because again, it shouldn't be just Amado, Sumire, and the others should have known about it too, right? Continuing the discussion between Koji and Inojin, at this point, Inojin seems to have drawn a conclusion from everything Koji explained. In short, Inojin feels a bit disappointed because he thought Koji actually knew much more about what was going to happen. But it turns out it's not that accurate, and most importantly, as Koji said, knowing the future can end up destroying that very future itself. Yeah, that's the most important part. And next, while Daemon was facing off against a large number of Mamushi there, Boruto arrived to back him up and help Ida from behind. It's impossible to count how many Mamushi corpses they've defeated, but at least it's almost like a mountain of corpses. And in fact, those Mamushi corpses actually stink terribly. And that's not all. Even though we saw how Daemon instantly destroyed a large number of Mamushi, Unfortunately, the mamushi are still capable of splitting their bodies. As a result, Damon becomes quite exhausted because their numbers keep increasing. And perhaps this is quite ironic. The Shikamaru we know is a shinobi with above-average IQ and even a genius, yet he himself seems to have no idea or strategy moving forward. Oh yeah, in this situation, there's another confirmation from Koji. In short, in the future, Koji once saw Inojin only learned the mind transmission formation after Konoha suffered heavy casualties due to the mamushi, which means that jutsu was mastered because of a late emergency situation when there had already been many casualties. But in the current situation, Inojin has already mastered that jutsu earlier, even before major casualties occurred, so they can fight mamushi with better preparation. Well, because of this one change, the future timeline shifted. Since they're fighting mamushi with Inojin already having mastered that jutsu, it's no surprise that everything that follows ends up being different from any scenario Koji had previously seen. In other words, the future changed because information from the future was used earlier in the present. And not only that, after seeing the fight against Mamushi, at this point we might even consider Mamushi a weak opponent, right? He didn't actually pose a real threat to Ida or Himawari, which also means that all these changes are the result of Inojin's new jutsu. And it can even be concluded that this achievement couldn't have been attained without Inojin's new jutsu. But even so, Inojin still can't ignore or underestimate the current situation. He still considers this to be extremely critical. However, the turning point in all of this comes when Inojin asks about the probability of winning. Inojin still doesn't understand the function of his new jutsu and considers it completely useless, especially in this situation. But that was at least until he recalled Amado's previous words. In short, based on Amado's analysis of Mamushi's movements in Konoha, a reasonable conclusion points to a single probability. As Mamushi keeps splitting into multiple bodies and moving based on shared information, Amado suspects there's a unified consciousness connecting them all. In other words, beyond each Mamushi's individual consciousness, there's another layer. A single shared consciousness that links them together. Yeah, that's the key point. And that's not all. Inojin, who initially underestimated the jutsu he learned from the future through Jippo's ability, was told by Koji that the greatest advantage of Jippo isn't power, it's information. Because if we think about it logically, the greatest power is essentially information. No matter how much power you possess, if you don't have enough information, it won't help you win in any situation. And this is where the Jippo ability remains incredibly useful. However, after all the complex discussions between Inojin and Koji, at least at this point, Inojin has gathered his thoughts and decided what he must do. There is no other way. This is the only way to end this invasion. And back to the battle. In the midst of the Mamushi swarm, suddenly an explosion scattered them as Ida and Damon burst out from within. But of course, as Damon and Ida flew away, there were still other Mamushi chasing after them. Even though Ida was flying so fast, the Mamushi's flying ability was far faster. And luckily, once again, Boruto arrived to back them up from behind. And yeah, like I said before, Shikamaru really had no clue at this point, because when Boruto asked Shikamaru to come up with a strategy or something, Shikamaru seemed to struggle to think and find a solution. But before Shikamaru found a solution, Inojin stopped the Shindenjin technique and caused the communication between all operation members to be cut off. And yep, this is where Inojin's real plan begins. Using a reverse summoning technique, the Jaku Kuchiyose no Jutsu, Inojin joins the battlefield. After that, Inojin plans to control Mamushi's consciousness. So through a technique called Kageshibari no Jutsu, he asked Shikadai to hold one of the Mamushi's movements there. And once that Mamushi stopped moving, at the same time, Inojin used Shintenshin no Jutsu to control Mamushi's consciousness, just as he had controlled Kobu's. But this time, it wasn't just one Mamushi he controlled, it was all of them. Because when that Mamushi was chasing Ida and Damon through its consciousness, Inojin gave a single command to control them all. As a result, they started acting strangely. And seeing that all the Mamushi were now under Inojin's control, Amado confirmed that Inojin wasn't just taking control of a single individual's consciousness. Rather, it was a collective consciousness controlling them all. And after everything was under Inojin's control, he attempted a massive sacrifice. Instead of triggering Damon's active reflection ability, Inojin, through the Mamushi's consciousness, declared he would destroy both of Damon's eyes. As a result, that intent instantly destroyed all the Mamushi's eyes, including Inojin's own. But luckily, thanks to Himawari being there, Inojin seems to have survived. Using Biju Chakra, Himawari healed the bleeding in Inojin's eyes. and it seems Himawari also regenerated the damage to Inojin's eyes. Because once again, if Himawari can regenerate such a fatal wound on Inojin's body, it shouldn't be difficult to regenerate his eyes, right? And finally, an absolute victory occurred so instantly as a result of the sacrifice of a true hero, Inojin. And after all of Mamushi's corpses began to slowly vanish, one of his Togadama floated in the air. And with no intervention there, Boruto immediately secured that Togadama. But Boruto seems to have another plan. He doesn't want to destroy that Togadama. Instead, he wants to return it to the Shinju dimension, right where the bug is trapped inside the tree. Because at the very least, Boruto doesn't want to let that Togadama just rot away. But before Boruto could actually return the Togadama, chapter 33 ended with the appearance of Code, who was hiding behind the tree where the bug was trapped. The big question, is this just a coincidence, or has Code been watching everything from the start while hiding behind every claw mark scattered across Konoha? Yeah, whatever your opinion is, let's chat in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, help me get 100 likes and 1K hype points. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye-bye. Data bio.